Hello, and welcome to another episode of Walk the Dog Cinema. We are out and about, getting the Roca dog here a little walk. She is more than amped and ready, and see if I can get her to look at the camera. Roca, there you are. Pretty girl, let's go. Yep, she is trying to be well behaved. As you can see, she's more than amped and ready. She's been eagerly awaiting getting going here. And today, while we're walking her, we're going to talk about the movie Speed with Keanu Reeves, Sandra Bullock, Dennis Hopper, directed by Jan de Bont. I hadn't seen this movie in quite some time, though I could probably not watch it for another 10 years and still never forget this movie. I have a history with this movie. I worked at the movie theater as a projectionist when this movie came out, so I was the one that built it on big spindles, got to preview the movie, and probably seen it hundreds, if not darn near 500 some plus times, just the ending alone. At one point I could probably quoted the whole movie verbatim. And then the other side of it is that beginning of the movie is actually filmed in a building that I have visited numerous times for my job. It's in downtown LA near Pershing Square, so I kind of know all the set work and the elevators and exactly where they're at in that building filming. So it's kind of an interesting side note for that movie, though I wasn't working for the company that I worked for at this time when that movie was made. I was just a young lad. As a matter of fact, I met my now wife at the movie theater, and this is one of the movies that she watched with me when we were just best friends. Hadn't really started dating yet, but yeah, so a lot of ties to this movie, and let's get into it. Speed. So what more is there to say? It's one of the best action films I think ever put on celluloid. I think this is Jan de Bont's first one after coming out of being a cinematographer. It kind of was released and people not thinking much of it, that it was going to be the big hit that it was. Definitely when it got to the movie theater, I remember that it wasn't expected to be as box office gold as it was. Though I'll say, when I saw the preview, I didn't know much of the movie, except obviously the poster with the bus. I remembered Sandra Bullock just coming off of Demolition Man, where she was fun. Obviously this movie made her in that regard. And so, she does a great job in this film. She has a down-to-earth, real notion to her. I didn't think, I would say, she has some charisma. I wouldn't think that coming off of this she would be the big star that she turned out to be. Though I think she kind of cemented that with more later on with Miss Congeniality and things like that, where she kind of honed in on that, kind of dorky vibe in that sense, and really played those up, where she kind of became more box office gold. Whereas, she started carrying movies here, but she still had a little bit of time to go, but you could kind of see some of the star power, where actually, this is the movie that made Keanu Reeves. I don't know if anybody remembers. I mean, he's coming off of Bill and Ted. He had Point Break. He's coming off Point Break, but that was really an actually Patrick Swayze movie. Very good director in Catherine Bigelow on that one. Though, it's a good action movie in the absurdiness of it. But, it was really Keanu Reeves kind of stepping out of the comedy of Bill and Ted and kind of trying to establish himself as kind of more serious actor. He made a misstep in the sense of how he was casted for Dracula, which was before this movie. Completely miscast. It's Jonathan Harker in that one. But this one, he finds his stride, and he really showed that he can pull a movie, and picking the right roles for him really be that action star. And, this is kind of the one where he became box office gold. And it's a slam bang movie. Like I said, it's one of those that by far, when we talk about action movie, you got your Die Hard, Lethal Weapon. I put Speed in there, Road Warrior. I'm just going off the top of my head here. You got Commando, Rambo 2. I'm not saying that First Blood isn't the better Rambo movie. I'm just saying that from pure action aesthetics, right? You can put Terminator 1 or 2. But it joined that list. Like, if you were going to kind of do a top 10, it would be a hard one not to include. But like I said, this is the one that kind of built Keanu Reeves' persona. You can see a lot of his John Wick character in this one. And I'm okay with Keanu Reeves kind of having that kind of droll typecast. It works. A lot of action stars are, Bruce Willis, always carried the everyman, getting beaten up. If you haven't seen Last Boy Scout, it's almost a darn near continuation of doing Lethal Weapon and Die Hard, basically. But he kind of plays the same character. Stallone kind of plays, offshoots of Rocky and Rambo. I mean, Schwarzenegger made a living off of it. Van Damme made a living off of it. Seagal made a living off of it. We're just coming out of the 80s of that. And this movie kind of is also that shift to where we're kind of getting out of the 80s action films and more into the 90s, which was like the 70s nihilism a little bit. I really love Speed. Watching it again, you look for other details. And there's moments that are quite dark in that sense. And granted, it builds up the tension. But by this time, we had Married with Children. And so there was a cultural shift in how we take our movies. There's a little bit of how Keanu Reeves goes about it as kind of like a little unflinching at times. So it makes sense in how they build that up to where then when he kind of falls for Sandra Bullock or has some empathy to what's happening to the people on the bus, it's a little bit of a character arc. But for the most part, the 90s kind of stopped dropping some character arcs or growth, and we just get kind of like slam bang action with darker moments where certain people get killed for shock value. And again, I'm going to get into a heavy spoiler here. Yes, it makes Dennis Hopper, who's a great villain in this, playing a very Dennis Hopper-like character. But the basis of them killing Jeff Daniels' character, I actually really hate that sequence in the film. I think it makes Jeff Daniels' character look like a complete buffoon. I'm not saying that movies didn't make cops look like buffoons, but not a main character who had a lot of pathos and we kind of root for. I just don't buy it. It's a sequence that's rather mean-spirited, which is very 90s. I don't know who all, but if you go back, like I said, the 70s had that. The 90s definitely picked that back up. And yes, we get this like wink and nod as people play against stereotypes and moments like with Scream and I Know What You Did Last Summer. But if you really go back over those movies, even Saving Private Ryan kind of falls into this. Though that's a great movie, it just wipes characters out. And yeah, you can say, well, it's a war movie, yeah, and we're gonna get our hope with our sorrow. But it's a very 90s mentality compared to the 80s where, they're kind of bucking those cliches that the 80s built. And, we're kind of trying to build up some anti-heroism. That was very popular in the 90s. And I would say on some level, we kind of haven't gotten so much the hope and prayers of 80s cinema, late 70s to early 90s cinema. I would like to see some of that come back. I think we've been in nihilism for far too long in movies at times. I'm not saying that there isn't a place or movement for that. I'm just saying that like Speed kind of blurs that line I'd rather kind of had this than how we get with The Mist. But you know, for whatever reason, people like their movies really, really dark. You know, it's kind of Sinner doesn't do too bad of a job in this day and age, but Weapons has that kind of nihilistic, a little bit of view to it. But I just feel like a lot of movies, I mean, even Disney movies nowadays, like how they kind of wink and nod about all the cliches and goings on. It's like, oh, we got you, and it's kind of a pessimistic view, and I'd like to see some of the pessimism kind of leave sometimes out of cinema. But hey, that's just me. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I kind of like to hear your comments about that. But again, you know, that's kind of what this movie brings about, kind of why I wanted to review it. Isn't a ton to talk about within the movie itself. Yes, there's some crazy absurdities with the bus jump, but in reality, they really jumped a bus, just not across the chasm like that. You couldn't do it, but they actually got a bus in the air for the stunt. There's great stunt work. Like I said, it's one of those when you watch it again, or if you haven't seen it in a while and you watch it, really think about, like, this is what made Keanu Reeves. I mean, this is the movie that catapulted him, not Bill and Ted. That put him kind of there, but this is the one that really just shot him to the stratosphere. It was a movie that wasn't supposed to do much and did a lot. You know, Jan de Bont came back out with Twister right after this with Bill Paxton, and that was a, you know, absurd but slam bang action film. Prior, like I said, Jan de Bont was a cinematographer who had worked on quite a few action films. I think he even helped Paul Verhoeven. I want to say RoboCop, but I'm also thinking Lethal Weapon, but I could be wrong with Jan on those. I just know he worked with John McTiernan on one of the Die Hards, or it might have, but anyhow, he had an action background. Should have done some studying up on that, but I just remember him being a cinematographer in a lot of action films, and I know he was tied to some pretty big stuff. But again, like I said, this was kind of a cultural shift too within movies. Started a little bit beforehand with it, but this is kind of like that tide where we really shifted into a much different aesthetic of things. Very much, we started getting our MTV directors who had been growing up on MTV, kind of coming into the fold here, or seeing MTV, coming out of MTV and directing. So this one, not so bad with the editing, but we started getting some movies that were just crazy edited, you know, 3-second blurbs where that was action. And, you know, it's kind of a genre that also faltered a little bit during the 90s, if you ask me. And maybe, you know, a lot of it went director to video and stuff like that. So it's kind of crazy what you would think direct to video is what just direct to streaming now. Though the quality is a little bit better on the direct to streaming, but anyhow, that's kind of the facet, kind of a mind's eye view of someone who kind of lived through it, still remembers it. Like I said, I worked in the theater at the time, so between late 91 all the way to late 94, I pretty much had seen every movie in the theater at least once. So just kind of remember the whole decade in that regard and how it kind of built. So started taking film classes and stuff like that right around that time too. So kind of crazy times, but interesting anecdote to this movie. And again, I think it's a great movie. It needs to be watched. If you've never seen Speed, you need to go right away and watch it. One of the great action films. Let me know what you think in the comments. And if you like what you hear, please subscribe so we can talk more movies. Have a good one, everybody.